Good evening, good afternoon. This is Dan Hall with CareStack. You are in the right spot at the right time. We're about to start our webinar, Proper Use of Legal Tools with Gary Harker. So I'll pass it over to you, Gary, at this point.
Awesome, I appreciate that. I've got my partner here, Dan McNeff. He is the owner of Legally Mine as well. He's here to facilitate some question and answers. I get a lot of times when I finish my presentation or even throughout where people want to say, how do I implement these things? What does that look like? So I want you to focus your attention on that, on what you could be asking. Write those questions down. I encourage you to write them down in the chat feature or even just in front of you. You may notice that a lot of the questions are answered throughout the presentation, but if there are any that are pending at the end, like I said, there's a Q&A that Dan can help you out with. I'll be here as well. But we're going to talk about keys to eliminate the threat of harmful lawsuits, what we can do to protect our personal estate, what we can do to increase tax savings. And unless you feel like you pay too much or don't pay enough in taxes, I mean, there's always ways we can show you to pay more, I guess. And then the last one is to protect your professional license. So we're going to go over all of these things. And it's a pleasure for me to be here with you guys. So thank you so much to CareStack and inviting us over here. So let me ask you a quick question. Do you see signs like this? Do you see billboards like it? Are Americans litigious? We have a ton of billboards like this. It's kind of redundant to ask, are we a litigious society? We make up 5% of the world's population. Of lawsuits worldwide, 90% of them happen right here inside the United States. Now, why is that? A lot of people will ask themselves, well, yeah, there's a ton of lawsuits. It must be because that's where all the attorneys are at. When I was involved in a lawsuit, what was very interesting to me is I was deposed. About 3 days later, I found myself in Europe on a business trip. It was a convention, and one of my friends came up and said, "Hey Gary, what's going on with you? You don't feel like yourself today. You don't look like yourself." I said, "Look, I don't want to be here, to be frank. I was just deposed 3 days ago, and it really took a lot out of me." And he said, "What's up with you and Americans and all your lawsuits?" And it was the first time that I really thought that America was more litigious than any other society, any other country for that matter. And so through the years, I thought, oh, I wonder why that is. And when I was introduced to Legally Mine and their attorneys, I asked them the question why that was. And the answer is actually pretty simple. If I were to sue you inside the United States, what's beautiful is I do not have to pay for an attorney at all, because my attorney will take my case on a contingency basis. He was paid a percentage of whatever he wins in the case or whatever the settlement is. Outside the United States, if I sue you, I have to, at the very beginning, I have to pay my attorney's fees. If I lose, I have to pay the prevailing party's attorney's fees as well. Now that seems like a very reasonable thing to do. If you lose, you have to pay the other person's fees. That's a huge demotivational factor right there. But again, in the United States, I need $0 to have to begin a lawsuit. USA Today did a poll asking Americans, what's the best way to get rich? What's the fastest way to get rich? Behind inheriting money from mom and dad and winning the lottery, the best way to get rich is to sue someone. So just think, how many people went and got a lotto ticket, lost, and they're still looking for their money, all right? Those are the types of people that are out there trying to win lawsuits. A friend of mine was sued. She was sued by a family friend. To keep it very simple, she said in a deposition, she says, "Hey, why are you guys doing this to me? Why are you suing me? We're friends, we're family, basically." And from across the table, the gentleman said, "Because you have more than I do, and I need it more than you do." So let me ask you a question. Based on today's demographic, the people that you know, is the percentage of population that would say a comment like this, is that getting smaller or is that getting larger? Unfortunately, it is getting larger. I talked a little bit about tort reform for dentists. I understand most of you are dentists on this program. Some of you may be CE. The reason why I bring this up is I think it's very important that you're part of your state societies. We often go out and we speak to state societies or even local societies on what you can do to improve the legal system. I was in Houston at the beginning of this year, and one of the doctors that was in the room said, the state of Texas has a tort reform of $250,000, a maximum cap on non-economic pain and suffering damages. However, it went to the Supreme Court. And when it went to the Supreme Court, the state law no longer was abided. It was now on Supreme Court, federal courts, and they surpassed that, and the individual won a $13.1 million judgment. That was in 2019. The reason why I express this is we have done a lot that we can under our own power, even at the state level, and it still does not support us on a personal level. So what can you do? What are the things that you actually can do to fix these things? Understand that our nation is run by career politicians and attorneys. As much as we'd like to change the laws, it's not going in our benefit. As it stands today, there are 8 politicians in Washington who have a medical or dental background. 8. So we're highly outnumbered. There's no ramifications for suing. This is why lawsuits become more and more prevalent. I talk about my family for a reason. I talk about them because we were involved in 2 lawsuits. I have 3 children, a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 2-year-old. The first time that we were sued, my wife was pregnant with our second child. We had a $500,000 company that increased to $4 million. And so we increased our insurance policy. Within 1 year after increasing our insurance policy, we were sued. Okay, we were told the best thing to do was to settle the lawsuit. So we settled. What we noticed is it was great because it was super fast, but our insurance premiums tripled in that time. We were sued a second time about 9 months later. And in that lawsuit, we decided we're going to fight it. We didn't want to continue to see over and over our premiums going up for the same amount of coverage. That lawsuit went about 3 years. The cost was about $10,000 per month. And at the end of the day, we won the lawsuit. We talk about the financial commitment, we talk about the time, but the thing most of the time we don't talk about is the emotional damage. I wish I could say that I was a better father during that time. I just wasn't. I was trying to save face for my employees, for my partners at work, for all of my customers. Everything was okay. And so the person who got the brunt of the emotional baggage was my wife. And my wife ended up having 2 miscarriages during the span of our lawsuit. These are very real topics that for some reason, when you are sued, you feel like there's a black plague, like you're the only one that's gone through it. You get to join a club, for lack of a better way to say it, where once you've been sued and you notice that, more and more people come out of the woodwork that they've gone through a similar experience. If there's anything that I can do for you guys today, I want to prevent these things from happening to you. So I'm going to go over some strategies that I've learned with Legally Mine that have really helped my family, knowing that malpractice lawsuits, I mean, they're big, yeah, but there's so many ramifications that come from it. Any type of settlement, we just can't allow these types of things to happen. So let me go over 5 key strategies that will help you beat the odds to these types of lawsuits. They are in uniquely structured entities. They are also backed by the Supreme Court. I want to think of this. The reason why there's different vehicles when it comes to different types of entities is the same reason why there's different vehicles to transport items from one location to another. There's a reason why we have semi-trucks versus sports cars versus SUVs. Everything has a different purpose, okay? And so we're gonna talk about some of those strategies, but I wanna ask you one question as we get started. What is the centerpiece of your wealth? Is it personal, is it professional, or is it entrepreneurial? I wish we could do a poll. So Dan Hall, here's your fun part. My question would be, could you do a poll about this one? But I'm going to tell you, it would be all over the map. It would be like 33, 33, 33. Okay. The real centerpiece of your wealth, most people say, well, the biggest risk is professionally. I want you to know, if and when you are sued, it's the business that is sued, your profession is sued, but also your person is sued. You have to remove everyone on the lawsuit. If you're sued outside of business, it's your person. When your child is in a car accident, your person is in the lawsuit. So as much as it's about business things, your person is the most important. It is the centerpiece of your wealth. Okay. So think of that as we grow here. How do lawsuits work? There's always cause and there's motivation. You can do nothing to control the cause of a lawsuit. That's why they're called accidents. Okay. There's also motivation. Motivation is something you can and you must control regarding a lawsuit. What is the motivation behind lawsuits? Well, if an attorney takes a percentage of money that's earned, his motivation is always the carrot. It will always be monetarily based. So let me ask you a question. What assets cause lawsuits? Here, there's a list of a number of them. You'll notice that more than likely you have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 of these. RVs, outdoor vehicles, firearms, equipment, you name it. And when we start a business or we start our lives, we think of these types of assets and we say, sooner or later in my life, I want these. And so we begin to acquire them. And if we start a business, more than likely our attorney will say, you need to get an LLC. An LLC is a limited liability company, okay? And you think about that, let me ask you, where does the limitation of liability begin and where does it end? Because most of the time what we do is we say, I'm gonna get a business and I'm gonna buy a building and I'm gonna buy equipment and I might even buy a car and all of that will be part of my LLC. There's tax deductions there, depreciation. I love this, I'm gonna do that. So now what happens when someone slips and falls at your office? That's going to be consumed in a lawsuit. But because all of the assets are inside of one LLC, all of the assets are now, all of the assets are inside of one entity, all of the assets within that will be exposed to the lawsuit. That means you're going to lose the equipment or the value thereof and the motor vehicle. Now, this is why our company, when we're sued, we're just creating larger and larger targets by acquiring assets. So how do you continue to grow in wealth, yet lower your risk? Well, the easy answer is to create multiple LLCs. You have one for your equipment, office, and your vehicles. And in such case that there's a fire or there's a slip and fall accident in your office, the only asset that is then exposed to the lawsuit is the office itself. You see how you just reduced a large portion of the lawsuit? Attorneys are always looking to elevate, to see what they can do to stack on to increase the value of a lawsuit. And you're doing a very poor service to yourself if you keep all of your assets inside of one LLC. So what type of motivational assets are there? Motivational assets are all based around one thing. It's based around money, okay? I wish I could sugarcoat it, you can't. Artwork, jewelry, investment portfolio, cryptocurrency, all of these things are your wealth. This is what you really want to have. And so my question is, if you could take all of those assets, your money, and you could put them into a safe and you controlled 98% of those, they're 98% protected. Would you not buy a vault and put them all in there? Well, of course you would, right? So what type of entity do you need? This is where we recommend using a family limited partnership or an FLP. There are general partners and there are limited partners. The general partner makes up 2% of the entity. Here's the great part. They have 100% control and 100% liability, yet the risk is only 2%. I like to think this as a cruise ship. If I'm on a huge ship, all right, who is ultimately in control and who's liable for the safety of every passenger? It's the captain, okay? What about everybody else on the boat? What are they doing? They're having a good time. Why? Because they have zero control of what happens and there's no liability either. That's why you have such a good time on the cruise, right? Why can't this be every day of your life? Why can't you have that type of peace of mind? So what we do is we say, hey, look, the general partner, instead of it being a fight between husband and wife who should win, we create a business that you own, both husband and wife. It's called a management company, okay? That company manages the FLP. It's generally owned, like I said, 50-50 between husband and wife. What that allows us to do is it allows us to name husband and wife as limited partners. You can also put your children in there or anyone you support financially there for tax reasons, okay? Now, trial attorneys, they didn't like this idea. They wanted to make sure that they could sue the 98%. And when they tried to do that, they went to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court found unanimously in favor of the family limited partnership. You cannot sue the 98%. They want a 9-0 ruling, okay? So we now have this ruling, good luck. And here's what it said. I want you to pay close attention to this. As long as the general partner maintains control of the entity, you cannot sue the limited partners. As long as the general partner maintains control. The reason why I set that up, it's a little cliffhanger, because laws have been built to get around and through asset protection. Judges can pierce the corporate veil in closely held corporations, meaning if there are less than 100 members of your corporation, you're closely held. They can impose alter ego rulings. They can dissolve your entity. So you look at a structure like this that we talked about. You have multiple LLCs. And if I asked by the raise of hand, how many of you have an LLC? The majority of you would raise your hand. You're right. Okay. Good on you. You've got a great start. But when a judge has the power to dissolve an entity or to pierce the corporate veil, what he's effectively done is he's just blown up this entire system. What protection do you have? You have to understand how the laws work. You need a holding company. A holding company is huge. It's the key to put everything together. So one second here. I want you to think of a holding company just like a management company, like a real estate property company. Very often you hire a management company to manage real estate. So all these other LLCs underneath, they all report to the management company. Now, this is not a new idea. In fact, you may have heard of some companies who currently utilize it. Disney, Walmart, Wells Fargo. I pulled this off of Wikipedia because I thought it made a lot of sense for this purpose. Wells Fargo Company is headquartered in California. Its operational headquarters are in New York. It's chartered in Delaware, and its main offices are in South Dakota. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? About as clear as mud. So let me ask you, why would a company like Wells Fargo elect to have their company owned in 4 separate states? The simple answer is because there are laws that benefit them from either a legal or a tax perspective in each one of those states. And that's why they do it. You think of a ski resort. When I live in Utah, if I go to Park City Ski Resort, I will pay Park City Ski Resort, and then I leave and I go down Payday LLC. That's one of the LLCs. And if I get injured on that, great. If I go down Widowmaker LLC, I have a higher likelihood of getting injured on that one. I can sue the entity where the accident occurred. So I'm going to sue Widowmaker LLC. How much money does Widowmaker LLC make? The answer is $0. So if I want to sue Widowmaker LLC, I can. And the judge, you know what? He might even award 100% of zero to the plaintiff, but they're going to get a grand total of 0. So there's a huge demotivational factor there because there is no money. All right. Legally Mind chooses to use the state of Alaska for a couple of reasons. Number one, they have an anonymity clause there. I can't go and identify what assets you own in the state of Alaska. It's a huge wall of protection there. There's also no dissolution in that state. The third one, and the most important, is it has the strongest verbiage when it comes to the charging order. Now, most people say, well, what's the charging order? Do you remember this when we talked about how the courts said as long as the general partner maintains control of your business, you cannot sue its limited partners? Yeah. The Trial Attorneys Association knew that. So what they did is say, let's take away the control of their business. They created something called the charging order that charges right into your LLC, and it gives the right to the judge to force a pro rata distribution of your funds to the plaintiff. So I'm going to use an example. I've got Dan Hall and Jeff Daly here, and I'm going to have Dan Hall is suing Jeff Daly. Dan, you got to be that guy. I'm sorry, man. Dan's suing Jeff, and I'm the judge, and I find for Jeff, or excuse me, I find for Dan. Dan's the winner. In fact, Dan, I'm going to award you $1 million, and I'm going to look at your book of business and say, look, Dan, you can afford this. I'm going to reduce your salary to $50,000 a year, and everything above and beyond that, Jeff Daly gets.
Oh man, come on.
Okay. Jeff, how you feeling about that?
I'm feeling good.
Okay, good. Well, we didn't like this idea. We didn't like the idea that someone can go in and get sued and lose everything. So what we did was we created a non-pro-rata distribution clause. This was built back in the 80s. Back in the 80s, you can control the verbiage of your documents. So now when Dan sues, guess what? He might win, but at the end of the day, I as the judge say, look, I have no right or authority to force you to pay. So I have to ask, okay, when are you going to want to elect to pay the defendant? You have 99 years, or excuse me, the plaintiff. You have 99 years to pay. Are you going to choose to pay that right away, or you want to wait, Dan? Do you want to wait 99 years?
Oh yeah, I'm going to hold off to that 99
You're going to hold off for 99
that'd
years.
Be
That's
best.
probably a smart idea.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I mixed a few things up there, but the point is, if you win the lawsuit, even if you win the lawsuit, the owner of the company gets to dictate when they pay and they have 99 years to do that. Okay. Can you see how there's no motivation anymore? If I'm the attorney and I take on a client and I find out that, when we sue and we win $1 million, that we're not going to get paid for 99 years, what's the likelihood of me wanting to even pursue this lawsuit? I'm not going to get paid for 99 years. I am done. Okay. They're going to find another piece of low-hanging fruit right next door. All right. We see it all the time. Okay. We have clients. We have over 12,000 clients. They get sued. Okay. But here's the beautiful part. When they realize that there is no motivation for the lawsuit, the cases are dropped. Okay. It's very, very simple. And Dan can talk about that even more if he wants to. But what the non-pro-rata language does that creates a tremendous advantage to you is we go on the offensive. We call this the revenge clause, and it's not something that we created. It was created by the IRS. This is a ruling that they may choose to impose at any time. They say a plaintiff using the charging order will have to pay income tax on any monetary judgment, even if there's no distribution from the defendant. So now you got this huge tax bill, and where's your money coming from? In the early 80s, these plaintiffs were now suing their attorneys for legal malpractice. I absolutely love it when doctors learn that there's such thing as legal malpractice, and you can kind of stick it to them by creating and changing the verbiage in your documents. We've reviewed thousands of documents. Very, very few, if any, have ever had the verbiage that allows the general partner to maintain control. That's the difference between an asset protection attorney and most other attorneys. I like to give people an analogy. When attorneys are going to law school, they take about as many hours learning how to protect your assets from a lawsuit in general as most medical and dental professionals learn how to run a business when they went to college. That doesn't mean you're poor business people or that they're poor attorneys. I just can't expect them to be very good at it, right? Okay, so lawsuits simply don't continue when you do this, when you get it all structured accordingly. So what do you do now? The next best thing, it's now time to protect your family. Let's create a trust, okay? A trust, there's different types. There's revocable and irrevocable. I'll just be very simplistic. A revocable one you can change, an irrevocable one you cannot. I've heard from time to time that, hey, my assets are protected because they're in a trust. A trust does not protect your assets. A trust, if it's a revocable trust, holds entities like LLCs and LPs, and those are the things that protect your assets. You need to have a trust, then LLCs and LPs, and those protect your assets. So another thing I get asked about, what about a will? You've got to create a will, put that will inside of a living trust. It becomes non-disputable. It avoids probate court. If your estate is worth between or over $50,000 or $100,000, depending on the state you're in, your estate will immediately go into probate. So having a living trust eliminates that. All right, let's talk about some good stuff. Let's talk about some tax savings. Hopefully that's what you guys wanted to hear about, some tax savings. There's a beautiful letter that the IRS has a note on their website that says, it is the responsibility of every American citizen to ensure they do not overpay their taxes. What does that not say? It does not say it's your CPA's responsibility. It does not say it's your office manager's or your spouse's. It is yours. In fact, 73% of Americans overpay their taxes. I like paying taxes. I think it's every American's duty to do that. I just don't believe in leaving a tip. okay? In fact, if I could save you $20,000 in taxes, I'd be hard pressed to think that you couldn't find a better way to spend that money than a politician can, okay? So how can you pay less in taxes? You first have to leverage asset protection entities. You've got to have a structure and then have tax advantage estate planning. What does that really come down to? It comes down to hiring a tax strategist. Here's a couple of tax strategies for you. There's a couple here. We'll walk through them. But when you use proper asset protection and estate planning, it can unlock thousands in tax savings. I hear a lot of times people say, I'm a W-2 employee. I can't save any more money on my taxes. Well, if you don't have any other entities, they're probably right. However, if you say, look, I have other assets that I'd like to protect, like if you have money you want to protect, you might want to consider getting an FLP or a family limited partnership. And if you do that, you can act as a business and you can create tax strategies for yourselves. So if you're a W-2 employee, don't turn off. These strategies may be applicable to you. You just need to learn you need to speak with a tax attorney who can help you structure your estate to open up tax strategies. So let's think about distributions. If you're an S corporation, you can pay yourself through a distribution and a salary. Once you hit the cap of about $144,000, you might as well start paying yourself through distributions. Why? Because you're saving about 15, 20% on your taxes through that distribution. That's a huge portion. If it's $100,000 that you're paying through distribution, that's $15,000 in tax savings right there. Trusts. There are taxes that are not paid by beneficiaries as of now, okay? Income shifting. Do you have kids? Are you putting them through school, private school? Just think of the expenses that you have on a regular basis, okay? You can choose to pay yourself first and you'll pay yourself at the highest rate you're going to pay, or you can pay your children first and they will pay their tax bracket. Well, I got news for you. If your children make less than $12,500, right around there each, and you employ them, guess who doesn't pay taxes on that? You don't, and neither do they. Okay. I look at this, I pay my kids each about $500 a month. That's $18,000 that my children are paid. They're 14, 12, and 2, right? You saw a picture of them. Why do you think I have a picture of my family on this presentation? Number one, because I like them and they're the most beautiful kids in the world, okay, right? But number two, that's a marketing expense, okay? My kids are part of a they're here at work. I can pay my kids to be models. There's a list of things you can pay your children for. A good tax attorney will show you a list of things that you can qualify for, and then you guys get to elect what they do. Are they janitors? Are they cleaning your office? Take a picture of them cleaning your office. You know, are they filing paperwork? Are they shredding paperwork? Are they there for corporate meetings as a business consultant? Okay, how much do business consultants get paid? Why can't your child who's going to graduate school qualify as a consultant? There's so many different strategies you can utilize. The question is, do you want to pay taxes on that money, or do you want to pay your kids and have them pay their taxable rate, which is, like I said, significantly lower than yours, 0, maybe 5%. What about a licensed professional deduction? This is huge. I learned this from Dan about 2 weeks ago. Dan McNeff, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit as well. I love this one, okay? The income, if your income is less than $465,000, you qualify for a professional license deduction. That gives you 20% of reduction on your taxes, just right off the top. Super, super simple. You have to have a pass-through entity like an S corporation. If you don't, guess what? You can't use it. Is that another reason why it would be a really good idea to learn how you should be paid? What types of entities you need to have in place so that you can utilize these tax strategies? Yep. Okay, what about your home as a business? I want to be very clear. There are 2 strategies here. The first strategy is using your home as an office space. I am in my office at my house. Many of you have them. Make sure it has a door and you can close it. It'll save you a couple $100 a year. Is it a big deal? No. Can it save you money? Yes, it can. Okay, so there's that one. Let me give you a second strategy to look at though. The IRS has their own code. It's 280A Section G. It's been around since 1984. Started with the Summer Olympics. didn't have enough housing. So they said, hey, look, you can rent your house out for 2 weeks and you do not have to claim that as income. So when I presented this to my wife, I said, hey, hon, guess what? We can rent our house out for 2 weeks and we don't have to pay income tax on that. She's like, who in the heck are we going to rent our house to? And I said, how about our own business? Your business is required by law to hold corporate meetings. And by law, it says you have to hold them regularly. So how often is regular? I like once a month personally. So once a month, that's 12 times. And I can do a Christmas party and a 4th of July party. There's 14 times right there. And I can rent my home out 14 times a year. And let's just hypothetically say it's $2,000. Now I'll tell you, it varies based upon the location where you live. Okay. It also has to do with how profitable or how much money your company generates. But at the end of the day, let's just call it $2,000 per month. It's about $28,000 in total, or we'll call it $30,000. If you had $30,000 that went directly to your bottom line from your business that was not taxed, would that save you any money in taxes? You better believe it, right around $13,000, $14,000. So why don't you use it yet? Again, I took these strategies to my CPA and said, hey, look, can you help me out with these? She had no clue what these things were. So what I did is had the tax attorney at Legally Mine communicate with my CPA, and I've been using the strategy for the last 5 years. It's a slam dunk deduction, okay? It works day in and day out. There is plenty of legal behind it. What about professional R&D tax credit? Can I qualify for it? You better believe you can. Almost all of you will qualify for this, okay? You have to know what's going on. It's been around since 1981. It used to be for big pharma. They said, hey, we want to make this applicable to everyone. So they made it a law in 2015. This has tremendous potential tax savings. This is a credit. This is not a deduction. It's a dollar for dollar credit. So how does that work? Well, the code says it refers to the time that you invest in training and implementation of products and processes. So let's look at just this presentation. Super brief, it's 1 hour. Who is paying you to be here? No one, okay? What's your hourly rate? Your time is worth something, right? The IRS wants to give you a credit for that time. So 1 hour, okay, $500. I get a credit for that. Now, if your brain is churning like it should be, how many hours did you spend in implementation of new products and processes in the last year? Did you go to any other conferences? Where did you get your CE from? Did you buy a new piece of equipment and have to train not only yourself, but also your staff to become proficient on that material or that software? Yeah. Did you know that qualifies as a credit for research and development? Okay. Talking with a qualified CPA that specializes in this stuff, I'm telling you, you've got to find someone who specializes in it, because most CPAs do not understand this portion of it. My dad was the CFO for a large hospital here in Utah, IHC. And I brought up this code, and the other one says, I've never heard about this stuff. And I said, Dad, that's because you've been out of it since 1998. He says, yeah, but I used to audit stuff back in the 1970s. He was an auditor for the IRS. And I said, Dad, these strategies are new. He did some research on it. He gave me the thumbs up 6 years ago. You can use this stuff, okay? Tax R&D was only 1 year old. You can utilize these strategies, all right? You just got to find out people who do it. So I'll tell you this, you can build a structure. It works just like this. On my side, we did it. It was a pretty penny, but I'll tell you, it was very difficult to have attorneys coming into our office every other week. We had different types of attorneys trying to get them to work together, whether it was estate planning attorneys, whether it was our own personal attorneys, just trying to discuss this. We didn't get a tax strategy that went around it, but we built it anyway. And the screen you can see on the far left-hand side, you have your business. That can be an LLC, an S corporation, what have you. Kind of acts as a little red herring there. If something were to get sued, it's going to be that business. But the only thing that's in there is probably 2 to 3 months worth of operating cash. Nothing else. Where are all of your other assets? They're in the LLCs underneath your holding company. How much money is in those assets? Nothing. Okay? There's no more motivation to sue. You control those assets. What about your personal finances? Those are in the FLP on the right-hand side. What asset is in your name? Okay? It's a trick question because the assets are not in your name. The entities that hold the assets are what is in your name. So now if your child, and this happened in San Antonio, one of our clients her son was in a car accident. Her son owns the car. Or excuse me, she owns the car that her son was driving. She was sued. Not only was he sued, the attorney was trying to go after the insurance, the driver, and the owner of the vehicle. As soon as they found out that they were clients of ours and that there were no assets to get, her name was magically removed from the lawsuit. That's the point. Remove your personal assets from the lawsuit. I'll tell you, in my case, it was expensive, it was time consuming, but at the end of the day, it was still worth it. It gave me such peace of mind. Okay. It's been almost 20 years since 12 years since the last lawsuit that came to my name. All right. I've been in business for over 20 years and it's been 12 years since I've had any lawsuits. It's been awesome. Okay. So Legally Mine has a strategy that they implement these structures for you. Okay. What we found is Dan purchased the company in 2007, 2008 from a gentleman, Jay Mitten. He's considered the father of asset protection. They used to sell these DVD packets. And you know what? The DVD packets were sitting on shelves collecting dust right next to their P90X workout videos. Okay. So let me ask you this. Why are they sitting on their shelves? Because we know people do what they like to do and what they're good at. In the same respect, people don't like to exercise and they're not good at it, so they don't do it. What about legal stuff? People don't like to do it. They're not good at it. So let me do this. Let a company like Legally Mine, like ourselves, do the work for you. It does require some time for you. I would like to speak with you each independently on a one-on-one basis. I do also want to open up for some Q&A, but if you want to talk to us, I want you to text 385-325-7644. Text your name and Care 5 to that. And you can, I'll reach out to you and we can schedule a time to talk. I'll post this up in a second here as well. But I want to give you some testimonials. This is Dr. Slank. He's out of Colorado. He said, I feel you'd be hard pressed to find this level of experience and legal expertise and that are specific to the healthcare professionals world and the dental. Their breadth of services cross into both personal and tax to clinical. We also do license protection. We want to protect what's yours. Okay, your professional license is huge. It's called Strategic Healthcare License Defense. It aids in mitigation to any lawsuits. These things have to be put in place before lawsuits are filed. You cannot call me once you're sued and say, hey, look, I want to put this up. I want to protect myself. I can't. At that time, it's too late. The most oftentimes I get people calling me, if it's not right after meetings like this, it usually happens between the next time that they hear about us is when they're sued. So get this stuff taken care of now. On the right-hand side, we also do Hipaa and Osha compliance. If you're dental, Medicare compliant, or if you're not dental, you're medicine, we do Medicare compliance as well. This is a tremendous value. Some of you are spending well over $4,000 in Hipaa and Osha compliance. That is part of our services that we offer you. It's included in our package. Dr. Ernest Roman is a pain management instructor. He's out of Dallas, Texas. And I met with him at a conference and he says, I'm a client of yours. And I said, really, is that the case? He says, yeah, I love it. In the eyes of the law, I am penniless. And I love that because I'll tell you, Dr. Roman is not penniless, right? But it's super nice that he feels that way. And in the eyes of the law, that's the case. He is penniless. So what Legally Mine does is they divide and protect all of your assets. We do estate planning. We have specialized verbiage in your current documentation, future documentation. We'll do that for you. We provide tax relief, peace of mind, and so much more. The only thing I'm asking you to do is provide me with 3 to 4 hours of your time so that we can implement the strategies for you. It's about half the cost is what I spent. I spent about $20,000 on mine. And we do it all under one roof. So now you have estate planning attorneys, trust attorneys, tax attorneys, all under one roof with your best interest and understanding there's a little bit of give and take, knowing I'm not just going to create an entity for the sake of it. I want to make sure that there's a strategy behind it as well. There is event pricing available. Because it's CE, we don't go over the pricing here, but I will tell you, it's, like I said, half the cost of what I spent, which was $20,000, and it's a little bit less than that. Okay, what does this include? Comprehensive personal plans. There's 3 parts to that. The first is a premium plus, where we do a review of your and management of your existing and new entities. We modify the verbiage wherever necessary. You have access to our staff of attorneys, Hipaa, Osha compliance, Shield, a year of premium plus service. I mean, the list of the things that are included in that are tremendous. There's about $15,000 to $20,000 in benefits of being part of Premium Plus. That is for you in your first year. We offer that for everyone to experience for 1 year. The majority of our clients maintain that Premium Plus service because they see so much value in it. The second part, part B, is about entity creation. How many entities do you need? What types do you need? There is a la carte pricing, but to be honest with you, when you get all of your entities done, you say, hey, look, I want this to make sense from top to bottom. So trusts, LLCs, FLPs, just for your business, what you have, you can do a la carte or just do unlimited entity creation. That means as many as you need for life. If you need 4 entities now and 10 later, or you need 10 now and 4 later, we're not going to charge you in the years to come. That's all included up front. And the third part of this is a tax impact plan. We provide a tax strategy for you, a personalized tax strategy. It looks like an Excel document. It's as simple as taking this piece of paper and giving it to your CPA and say, can you implement these? It says, here's an entity that we've created for you. Right next to the entity, here's how we're going to implement those strategies and how much money you're going to save. There's a tax savings guarantee that goes along with that. Most people will save that in 1 year. Some it might take 2 years. Your full investment with Legally Mine will be paid for with your tax savings guarantee. Because at the end of the day, if you had, regardless of what you had in the pocket, you're going to pay taxes this year. Let's just say it's $15,000 in your pocket that you have to pay the IRS. If I could say, look, pay me that money and I will make sure that you will save $15,000, not only this year, but every year to follow, would that not be beneficial to you? For most of you, I think that would be a yes answer, kind of a no-brainer. Yeah, the point is you won't pay for this. In fact, you'll save hand over fist every other time. I want to share a quick story with you. It's a story of my brother. My brother used to be a huge mountain biker. He would do 200-mile bike rides, and he was riding his bike to work just about 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago now. He was riding his bicycle to work, and he was making a left-hand turn, and he got hit by a drunk driver. The drunk driver was going about 45 miles an hour, and he hit my brother. We flew to Denver Hospital, where he didn't make it. And it was really tough for my family. He had 3 young kids. He was 39 years old. He had an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a newborn. And it was a really difficult situation, obviously, for the family. His wife's sister is an attorney. And she said, you know, I'm going to do everything I can, and I'm going to get every dime I can for you. And went out there, did some work for about 3 weeks, came back and said, hey, look, this is what I found. The individual driving your car was celebrating probation. He hadn't held a job for 7 years. Okay. The car that he was driving, he did not own, and it was an uninsured vehicle. So according to the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the law, my brother's life was worth $0. How do you replace a very significant 6-figure income? You can't bank on the fact that the legal system is going to bail you out. He did nothing wrong. Okay. Now I want to take a pause and just sit back for a second. What happens if you're the individual on the bike? What if you're riding your bike and you get hit? What are you leaving for your family? What's set up for them? Do you have a trust that's ready for them? My brother had $3 million worth of life insurance. And so his family's taken care of. But if he didn't have that, it wouldn't be taken care of for his family. He had all of that into a trust, which delegated who got what assets. It was a very, very simple thing for them. Now I want to take a pause and I want you to sit back and ask yourself, what about the person who's driving the car? What if you were driving the vehicle or your child was driving the vehicle, or your spouse, and their phone fell and they had to go down and pick up the phone and they hit another driver or they hit a passerby, and now there's a lawsuit. How much is the value of that individual's life? What is that life worth now? In the eyes of the law, according to an attorney, it's whatever money they can get out of you. That's how much it's worth. There is no cap to the life of a human being. There's no cap. They're going to try to get as much as they can out of you. This is why we do this presentation. It's really difficult for me, but at the end of the day, if there's anything we can do to protect you, we want to do that. Okay? It's so big. I'm grateful for people like Dan McNeff, who put this company together and said, let's implement these strategies, because doctors are the #1 most litigated profession in our country, and they do the most for our country than anybody else, for that matter. And my first Christmas party I went to, Dan got pretty emotional at the party, and he looked at how many people were there, and he said, I'm so pleased to see all of you here, because at the end of the day, that means we're protecting more and more people. And that's really where the heart of the company is. What can we do to protect you? What can we do to keep the money that you create in your own pocket? Dan, I want to open up for Q&A. Dan Hall, would you like to please, just a second, Dan McNeff, I'm going to put you on, unmute you. And Dan,
yes.
Dan McNeff, you're still on mute. Do you mind unmuting yourself?
Gary, I do have a list of questions. I've been keeping them up through chat and
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Dan McNeff. Dan Hall, go ahead and start.
Okay, so we have a question from Donna, who works at multiple locations as a 1099 or W-2, depending on location. Besides malpractice, what other type of insurance should they consider? I don't know if this is within the vein of what we're talking, or.
Yeah. So let me just tell you, malpractice is a must. An umbrella policy is never a bad thing. However, you should not depend upon the umbrella policy. Now, when I tell you that, you need to understand that I was the senior vice president of Citigroup and over their insurance divisions. And I can just tell you that, having worked with insurance, you have different types of insurance and different companies who have a willingness to pay. Malpractice is pretty darn good, I got to tell you honestly. However, umbrella policies are famous for finding a way to wiggle out of any claim. That's why the policies are cheap. So I always tell people, they're so cheap, it's probably worth having. But understand, it's kind of like wearing a hospital gown. You only really think you're covered. So as far as the insurance question is concerned, those are the only two insurances that you would really want to look at. Obviously, you should have some car insurance if you're driving from one place to another. Okay.
Thank you for that, Dan. You know, we have a lot of questions around paying the children. I'm going to cobble some of these together, okay?
Yeah.
So it came across the spectrum. Do
I
they have to be
saw the
single?
question.
Oh, you did? Okay. You want to take a swing at those, Dan?
Yeah, let me just handle this. First of all, when you do income shifting, I can shift income to any individual, and the person to whom I shift the income will become responsible for the taxes on the money I give to them. If I have minor children, actually, I think the IRS allows it up to 26 years of age now if they are in college, and I give them less than $12,000 a year and they don't have any income from any other source, they do not have to report that income, and I don't have to either. I can take a deduction from my business by shifting the income to them. So if I've got a dentist friend in Colorado Springs, he had 10 kids and he gave them all a little money and he gave them all meaningful work. And so they earned it. He each took their money and he used it for their care. He set money aside for them. The bottom line is, as long as he does not exceed the $12,000 number, he doesn't lose them as a dependent. They get the income and it can be used for their own benefit, clothing, school programs, so on and so forth. Now, if I've got a child in college, let's say I've given them $20,000 a year. Does that exceed the $12,000? It does. But they become responsible. I still get the tax deduction and they become responsible for the taxes on the money that they get. However, because they get to deduct their various college expenses, I've done this with my children. None of them have ever paid a dime in income tax. And at the same time, I got the deduction and I didn't have to pay the taxes on it either. Does that answer the question for you? I think we covered it all.
I think you got the scope of it there for sure. Thanks for that, Dan. Do you have the list up or do you want me to read from?
No, let's go ahead and read from what you got.
Okay. So let's jump in here. We had a question. Okay, from Peggy. Do you utilize mediation as a process to resolve medical and dental conflicts and avoid unwanted lawsuits?
So mediation is not a bad idea. Almost everybody has it in their contracts. The one thing I would use mediation for would be if I do not want to process it through my insurance company. If I, in fact, have a slip and fall in my office and I'm not covered by an umbrella policy, if I am covered by an umbrella policy, I'm going to turn it over to the insurance company and let them settle it. Let me just tell you what typically is going to happen. And this is what happens probably 10 times a week in our office. Somebody calls us up and they report that there's been a malpractice claim. And so, or a slip and fall or an employee complaint. And so what happens is we call the plaintiff's attorney and we're not hiding anything from them at all. The law will take care of it. We know that the assets are protected. We actually walk them through the entire situation. We show them exactly where the assets are. It doesn't matter if they know where they're at or not, because they can't touch them. And so that's what we do. We just show the plaintiff's attorney, look, this is the way everything is structured. You cannot touch a dime of my client's money. So you can't touch the assets. The way we orchestrate this, you will not be able to even take a single business asset. There is no motivation whatsoever to ever sue any one of our clients. So now what happens is they turn and they say, well, we'll settle with whatever the insurance company can offer us if the insurance company is involved. If I do not want the insurance company involved and I want to take care of them, I can do that through mediation. But that's a decision that you would make on your own based on what you want to do. Now, I have one other thing.
I just want to give a 3-minute warning here.
Okay.
Dan, we're coming up on the top of the hour. Thanks.
Just real quickly on a malpractice claim, if you have a malpractice claim that gets settled through malpractice, they have the right to report you to the National Practitioners Database. We organize your LLC and your license in such a way that they cannot do that. Yeah, so the insurance company will be forbidden from reporting you to the NPDB. Now, if you do something egregious, your dental board can still do that, but the insurance company cannot.
Thanks for the comprehensive response. And Dan, do you think in the next 2 minutes we can get through? We had a few questions on utilizing your home, where that came up.
Great. So when you use your home for an office, depends upon what kind of a home you have, depends on what kind of an office you have, and it can range from a few $100s to a few $1,000s in tax savings. However, 280AG allows you to rent your home out 14 times a year. If you have 2 homes, you can rent both homes out. They have to be a primary home. It can be, you have to live in the home for at least 14 days. As you rent that home out, whatever rent you collect is tax-free. If you rent it out to your business, it's a tax deduction as well. So you save in two ways. And so that is the magic of 280 AG. And I don't know do you have any other question here on that subject?
You know, I think we got the bulk of them. We had Edite ask quite a few questions. I would encourage them to text the number because they had a lot of questions, like even some around pricing and stuff. And I think that might be better handled offline, you know, directly with Gary, perhaps.
Yeah.
And also some folks asking about a recording of this. I'm guessing again with the presentation, they can text Gary, get some details on how we can share this information offline with you all as well too.
Absolutely. Check
Thank you
it
all
out.
for your time and participation. It was a great event. Thank you, Gary and Dan. And as always, Jeff, we appreciate your support.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.